Hey, so I want you to do me a favor. Get a book. You don't physically have to do it, but follow the concept here. I want you to get a book. Get it in your mind. Get a real one if you wanted to, which will take more work to do this, but any book. Let's try a book you've never read before. One you've wanted to read, one you don't know anything about, but you want to read it. You know the description. Now, I want you to take and on every other page, backside of the page, whatever, maybe even the first page and then the third page, and I want you to white out that entire book of every half page, or I want you to rip the book in half. Keep only half the book, front half, back half, doesn't matter. Probably more specific to the back half and get rid of it. But once you have all those pages whited out, once you take that half of the book, now tell me, what was the story? Don't guess. What was the story? You'll never know, right? You'll never know what that other half of it was. You'll never see the words that were there unless you get another copy of the book. I would consider getting another copy after you've basically destroyed that first book as wanting to hear out the story in its full context, wanting to know the whole story, the whole thing, because then you'll literally get both sides of the story. Now, let's transfer that over. What if that was rules for a company? Why do we have rules? You go and get a job, you're going to have to follow basic set of rules plus other ones that do not only the purpose of function, but also to help get revenue, get money, help you get your paycheck. If you followed only half the rules because you didn't bother to read the other half, you didn't bother to learn the other half, are you guaranteed to do everything the right way? Let's throw in another element. What if nobody told you the other part? What if everybody was just expected to know the rules, like a lot of companies, and just follow them? Everybody's an adult, everybody's independent. You should know the rules. So if you didn't follow the rules because you didn't know the rules, well, how can you guarantee that you're doing things the right way? How can you guarantee that the information you have is accurate and full to your knowledge? Again, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have the knowledge, you wouldn't know the knowledge. So, if knowing the whole thing, if getting the whole story is the whole purpose of being able to follow along, to know what's going on, to be well informed, why then do we treat people individually as if not only half the story is everything that matters, but you're also the author of the book? Now, what if you were asked to co write a book, but you only gave your account, your perspective, your point of view? How then do you know what the rest of the story is? How do you know the other half of the book? How do you know what that second part of what was supposed to happen actually took place? Again, you don't. Only in finding out all the information, all the facts, can you accurately follow the story. Now, here's a kicker. One of the expressions I hear all the time from people who are frustrated or angry, sometimes people who are nonchalant: I don't have to listen. I don't have to care. I don't need to know. But that last one, need to know. If you don't hear the rest of it, if you don't read the other half, then how do you know what you need? I consider necessity to be something that you found out all the details and the information, and then you get what you need to work with the situation from that point. So, what happens if you never hear the other side? What happens if you never read the rest of that story? What if you're trying to recreate certain parts of that story, but those pages, you whited them out? You threw away that half of the book. You didn't learn all the rules for the business. What happens if you're trying to emulate something? You need all the details, not just some of them. Now, where that comes into conflict is that if you've had past experience with people, sure, the past is a good thing to go off of. It's a good guide rail. But if we only go off of past existence, past experience, how somebody was, you'll see a lot of TV and movies that will push this storyline narrative to show that the villain is the villain and that they don't change. But how many times have we said to people, you have the ability to change? Or has somebody told us that you have the ability to change? What if we change? What if they change? What if we lack the knowledge about anybody to know whether or not they've changed? At the same time, we see people change all the time. They go from being child to adult. They go from being in one house to another. They go from job to job. They go from trial and stress to outcome. Change. But if a person's perspective changes, then so will their personality. But the point I'm getting at is you won't know if a person has changed or what changes they've made unless you get the other side of their story, unless you get their perspective. And one of the biases that we face, one of the hardest biases, if not the most difficult, is the bias of family. But I think that family is a good example of what lessons we're supposed to learn in society, and one of which is how to get along with people of different perspectives, how to get along with people of different viewpoints, personalities. Our own families teach us that before we go into the world, and yet we have so many stigmas that interfere mentally. We have become a society of fear. We have become a society of doubt. We have become a society of tell me what to do, somebody. And then we go seeking help from those that are in a better position, higher authority, more power. And many of us rely on the government. If it helps, then that's good. But when did we stop trying to be detectives? When did we stop trying to find out the truth? When did we stop looking for the other half of the story? How many times did you watch a movie you were really into, but things got in the way and you had to pause the movie and you never came back to it? Or you couldn't come back to it until a long time later. By the time you got to the other half of the movie, other people are already talking about it. But getting the information because we decided to involve ourselves or put ourselves into that situation. Well, now we need the other half to see the whole. When it comes down to it, you are half of anybody else's story that you've ever been involved with or interacted with. And they are half of yours. And all I see is a bunch of people going around with half stories with this person and that person. Now imagine if all of those half stories were in an actual book. How much would you know? You'd know the whole story, sure, but unless they're put together in the right places, you're not going to understand the story. You're not going to know the whole book. You're going to have half a story. That's the same thing as going to bed with unfinished business. Sometimes, however, you need to take a rest and a break. Because who sits at one time reading a whole book just to get through it instead of reading a chapter at a time or a section at a time or marking the spot you were in? Reality will always get in the way of personal want, sometimes personal need. But you don't balance it out by trying to just sit through the whole thing in one session. You have to go back. You can't memorize the whole thing through one read through. Sure, you'll learn what happened, but how much do you adapt? See, you read a story, you adapt to the story in your mind. You can put yourself there. You can experience what's going on, but you will always be a stadium watcher. You'll always be part of the audience. In reality, when it comes to interaction, you are both the audience and the other side, the other team. And if you were sitting there spectating, then you'd be able to see both sides. But a lot of times we choose to be spectators in our own point of view. We don't see ourselves as anything, we're just watching, even though we're the one interacting. So the next time that you want to go and get mad at somebody, the next time you want to be excited for somebody, the next time you go to interact with somebody, go to listen, go to learn. See, patterns are preset. All patterns were created a long time ago. And they're all based on how we interact with each other and how we are as people. We're going to repeat patterns. We just may not know what the pattern is. So to understand and see things better, to help you understand what the end result will be, well, that's not a psychic ability. That's not prediction. That's just knowing what patterns to look for. I'm sure you're going to have time frames that get involved, but learn from the other person what you can. And if you know them to be such the type of person that they're going to cause problems, you already know what to expect. But if they're not typically somebody who's trying to cause problems, if they're not typically somebody who people ever have issues with, if they're not somebody who goes out there and just has a negative influence on society, then listen to their story. Just like you would want them to listen to yours and get the whole story, not just half a book. Anyways, that's my food for thought for today. I will see you all next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will talk at you later.